At a rally in Iowa over the weekend, GOP frontrunner and four-time indictee Donald Trump claimed in an unhinged and incoherent, that's a good one to trip over. Certainly takes the fastball off going after someone's incoherence when you're like, that guy's incoherent. Hey, the difference is I own up to it. I'm not like incoherent or incoherent, as some people say. I've heard it both ways, incoherent and incoherent. The Canadian dictionary accepts incoherent. At a rally in Iowa over the weekend, GOP frontrunner and four-time indictee Donald Trump claimed in an unhinged and incoherent rant that he will somehow redo the 2020 election and that he would win in a landslide. Oh, Jesus Christ. But the thing is, I don't want to be president. No, I'm going to go from the end. Don't worry, Wally. You don't have to go back. Landslide, you know what that means, right? Landslide. Landslide. If Jesus was the scorekeeper, he's a normal guy. This is normal stuff. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Before we get to all that, I do want to bid a brief farewell to George Santos before the world forgets about him, which is sadly already happening. In fact, just to show you how quickly the world has moved on from the Santos era, staff at the Capitol removed the plaque from outside his office and changed the locks on his door almost immediately after he was expelled. And as a New Yorker, I'm really impressed they got building maintenance to do anything that quickly. The last time I locked myself out of my apartment, I had to just move. Also, it's one thing to take the nameplate down, but changing the locks that quickly is a real tip of the hat to how shady that guy is. They were worried he would sneak back into his own office after he was expelled. His last official act was making impressions of his keys in a bar of soap. And Santos, for his part, made a quick exit. He bolted from the Capitol before the vote was even over, got into a getaway car, and drove off into the sunset where he burst into 1,000 butterflies. And he was conspicuously silent for a guy who seemed to relish the notoriety he'd gained. His only statement was a fashion statement. He decided to embody the role of soap opera villain by wearing his overcoat like a Phantom of the Opera cape. Of course, Santos is such a bad con man. If he did wear a Phantom of the Opera mask, it would probably just look like the other half of his face. And sorry, real quick, did you just never need glasses? Was that also a thing that wasn't a thing? You're a weird dude, George Santos, if that's your real name. Throughout his brief time in Congress, Santos has become an expert at giving breathless answers while being chased by hordes of reporters. But as he escaped the Capitol for the last time on Friday, he ignored all the questions.
We are waiting to see if he says anything there. Let's listen in. Nope. Jumped in the car, closed the door, windows rolled up.
Any comment? Mr. Santos, any comment?
Mr. Santos, hold on, Mr. Santos, that's my car. Wait, that's my car, come back. Mr. Santos, my dog is in there. Apparently, Santos had only one brief parting comment for reporters before he fled the Capitol.
For his part, Santos told reporters, quote, "Why would I want to stay here? To hell with this place."
Okay, Bachelor contestant in back of limo trying to convince us she's happy she didn't get a rose. You can't break up with them. They broke up with you. So that is how one of the most bizarre chapters in American politics came to an end, and how one of this country's most infamous con men slinked away in disgrace. Of course, one can't help but notice the obvious difference between the GOP's treatment of George Santos and his treatment of Donald Trump. Because that's how Donald Trump should have left the Capitol, locked out of his office, hounded by reporters, and fleeing in the backseat of a nondescript compact car with his knees crunched up against his chest. Because even with everything Santos has been credibly accused of, none of it comes close to the crimes committed by Donald Trump. Sure, Santos spent campaign funds on Botox and OnlyFans, claimed he was a star volleyball player at Baruch College, and wore a stolen scarf to a Stop the Steal rally. But there was only a Stop the Steal rally to wear stolen goods to because Trump tried to overturn an election and end constitutional democracy in America. I would be thrilled that the worst thing Trump did was spend campaign money on Botox and Sephora. Then at least he'd have clear skin and beautiful plump lips. Instead, Trump remains the GOP frontrunner for president and is openly promising to install himself as a dictator who will use the levers of power to exact revenge on his political opponents. For example, at a rally in Iowa over the weekend, an increasingly deranged and incoherent Trump claimed that somehow, through the courts or something, he would redo the 2020 election. Although, honestly, it's very hard to follow what he's saying.
I got indicted 4 times because I'm questioning a crooked election. but we're not questioning it. We know the results. We know it. And when we go through courts, if we ever even have to do it, because you have presidential privilege and also we should never have to do that. But if we do, we want to redo the election only from the standpoint, we want that election, we want to look at it very carefully. We have so much information. There was so much corruption in that election.
You know, Republicans like to claim Joe Biden is in cognitive decline, but this dude is in a cognitive free fall. It sounds like his plan is to win the 2024 election so he can redo the 2020 election and win that, which would then make him ineligible to win the 2024 election. He already won, at which point starts fading out of inauguration photos, Marty McFly style. Oh, no. I'm sorry, but if it's a choice between two different types of old, I'll take Biden old over Trump old every day. Tripping up the stairs is one thing, but Trump's the one walking around saying he wants to redo an election that happened 3 years ago, like a nursing home grandpa who still thinks he's in a tent in Quezon. Also, no, you got nothing. And that's not just me saying it. That's over 60 courts and your own lawyers, several of whom have already pleaded guilty and apologized for lying about the election, like Jenna Ellis or Sidney Powell, Trump's kookiest lawyer who looked in her mugshot like she was in a staring contest with the ghost of Rudy Giuliani. In fact, even Rudy, arguably Trump's closest ally when it comes to election lies, admitted, we got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. And this is a guy who recently filmed the Thanksgiving episode of his internet show with a fake fireplace behind him that made it look like flames were coming out of his head. Although I think that's what actually happens to Rudy's head when you ask him to do lawyer stuff. Uh-oh, my brain's overheating. Quick, grab me one of the spare brains by the hearth. Those aren't brains, Rudy, those are gourds. They'll have to do. But of course, nothing can stop Trump from claiming he won because he's deeply delusional. Over the weekend, he put a new twist on his election line that somehow made it even more deranged. Although, again, listen closely to this completely incoherent rant and see if you can make any sense out of it.
And like in 2016, we just ran the whole East Coast of the country, and that made up for California, which I actually believe that if they didn't have rigged elections out there, if they didn't have all the paper ballots, they send out like 36 million ballots, and nobody knows where the hell they're going to or coming from. I think a few people know where they're going to, and a few people know where they're coming from. But I think if you had a real election and Jesus came down and God came down and said, I'm going to be the scorekeeper here, I think would win there, I think would win in Illinois, and I think would win in New York.
Now, I think if God and Jesus came down here, they'd take one look at Trump and say, enough of this heathen and his ravings. Bring us to the candidate the evangelicals support. What's that? Is him? Oh, no. I also think if God came down, Trump would somehow find a way to lie about that, too. It wouldn't be enough for God himself to come down to earth. Trump would have to embellish the story to make himself look good. Better than God, even. I remember one time God came up to me, big God, strong God. Tears pouring down his celestial face and running onto his flowing heavenly robes. And he said to me, Donald, you won the election? Now touch my finger like Adam. And I said, no, thanks, I'm a germaphobe. And I feel like you've touched a lot of sick people. In fact, this rally was so deranged and the lies were so flagrant, even Fox News cut away and fact-checked Trump.
And then, no.
Well, the former president finally got around to some campaign promises amid lots of cheering, as you heard. Many untruths. The 2020 election was not rigged. It was not stolen.
I mean, even Fox cut away and called him a liar. The official 24/7 Trump network, that's like the San Diego Zoo cutting away from its panda cam and putting up a disclaimer that says, that's not a panda, it's a former congressman dressed up as one. The saga of George Santos proves that the Republican Party is capable of expelling fraud, liars, and criminals from their ranks. In Trump's case, they just refuse to do it because it's politically expedient to remain loyal to him, even if he's threatening to destroy constitutional governance in America. What happened to George Santos is what should have happened to Donald Trump, although there's still a very good chance Santos comes back and runs for Congress again, claiming his name isn't George, it's
Jesus.
This has been a closer look. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching A Closer Look. And as a reminder, my brother Josh and I have started a new podcast called Family Trips with the Myers Brothers. We hope you listen. We hope you like it. And see you soon.